And a happy hump day to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Had our fair share of fog in the picture for yet another morning. I know it's starting to feel like a bit of Groundhog's Day with your forecast, just repeating the same day over and over and over again. However, there are some differences between your Wednesday afternoon as compared to what we did see on Monday and Tuesday. So we'll break down that in more detail. But so far throughout the first part of January, we had that weekend rain chance, and we did have a couple of showers that came to fruition as of last weekend. But ever since then, it has been a bit of a dry stretch, at least kicking off a relatively dry stretch where we haven't recorded any rain. So our numbers continue to go down to the bottom of this near normal box and starting to approach dry territory for the month of January itself. So all in all, just over a half inch of rain, 0.61 inches of rain that we have recorded at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. Average for the month of January, just over 4 inches of rain, around 4.02 inches. And then the record set back in 1925. You will see this number pop up very shortly in another graphic that I did generate as of today. But we will be on the lookout for this drought monitor update, which we will get as of tomorrow. I do anticipate some areas farther to the north may see some improvement because they saw some rainfall totals up to around 2 to maybe even 3 inches over the course of this weekend. But areas over to the west definitely need the rain the most out of anyone that we have seen. They still are under severe drought criteria, while the rest of central Georgia is simply under moderate drought criteria. But we do have another rainmaker on the way as we head into the weekend, and hopefully that will prevent any of these drought conditions from worsening as we get next week's update come around next Thursday. So we will be looking out for that tomorrow in between the 8 and 9 a.m. hours. So of course we always like to talk about it here on your extended forecast come around 11 a.m. tomorrow. Near record warmth is the main headline that we will have in store for each of the next couple of afternoons. Rain is looking likely on Saturday afternoon and really the late afternoon into the evening time frame. We'll go over the specific timing with those rain chances. But then, of course, after the front makes its way through, cooler and drier air starts to take over behind the frontal boundary, and that's going to result in at least bringing the numbers back down to where they probably should be this time of year, with high temperatures down into the 50s and some low temperatures that get back down closer to that 30-degree mark. So this is a much better image than all of these sky cams showed as of early this morning. Yes, you are going to see your fair share of maybe some light puddles and some slick surfaces. We did have a lot of mist showers pop up this morning in light of the very humid atmosphere and a lot of that surface fog that did form. So we are still seeing our fair share of maybe slightly damp surfaces across central Georgia until you start to get some peaks of sunshine like downtown Macon is currently getting at this moment. Still no peaks of sunshine at the Georgia National Fairgrounds. In the same case down in Warner Robins in downtown Dublin, also dealing with a bit of an overcast environment. But I do anticipate a lot of this cloud cover to continue to clear out as we go throughout the next couple of hours, just like it has on Monday, just like it did on Tuesday, just like it did maybe back very early during your weekend forecast. Here's a look at your current visibility map, where it still is low visibility over to the east, the southwest, and the north. But this is some very thin fog in nature. All of your visibility is getting ready to return to that 10 miles that you can see far and wide on a crystal clear afternoon. Temperature-wise, we actually have gotten a little bit of a warm up, but your numbers were very, very warm to start out this morning. Actually, Rochelle right now, 66 degrees. That's only 2 degrees warmer than what the morning low temperature was sitting at 64 degrees for most of the morning hours. But your temperature map is scattered about the 60s nonetheless. Some low 60s over here to the east and the northeast. 64, 65, 66 across the trio of Macon, Warner Robins, and down to Cochran. And then we have some upper 60s. 68 degrees might be the warmest number I spot. Actually, 69 down there over in Americus in Sumter County. So compared to the rest of the United States, the southeast corner specifically, our numbers may be just slightly cooler than what we see back over into Mississippi and Montgomery. So that's where we can see some upper 60s. Remember, 69 was the current temperature in Americus. Farther down to the south in Florida, already holding on to the 70s. 74, the warmest number over in Panama City and down in Jacksonville as you go to the Gulf Coast and you go over to the Atlantic Coast on both separate sides of the state of Florida. And I do imagine, once again, Miami probably a bit of an outlier there below Orlando. more than likely probably already seeing some 80s in the forecast, but we aren't going to be talking about any warm temperatures up to that threshold, even though we could be flirting with some near record warm high temperatures later on today. And the big messy atmosphere that you walked out the door to, that was because of this. The dew point temperatures have continued to get a steady increase. We're actually allowing for some light green color to filter back into the forecast, along with scattered dew point temperatures in the 60s, something we typically do not see in the month of January whatsoever. So we are starting to get an influx in moisture content, and that has been courtesy of that south and southwesterly breeze. And with a little bit of humidity to work with, again, it's not super muggy like you would see on a typical July or June afternoon here in central Georgia, but it is a bit noticeable as you walk outside. And as long as we keep this little bit of moisture in the atmosphere, that can create maybe some scattered sprinkles or maybe some scattered mist showers like you saw this morning, and it will continue to be a factor with contributing to some foggy skies each and every morning. So here's a look at the winds and the wind gusts now, where we do see maybe a light breeze farther down to the south in these blue shades. Not near as gusty as what we were talking about as of yesterday afternoon. And again, it was really about a 3 to 4 hour time frame just past lunchtime where the winds did pick up just a little bit. And then after that, they kind of subsided as you went into the nighttime hours. But coming out of the west now, that's the most important note. Got to really focus on where the direction of some of those winds are coming from. And now that it doesn't have that southerly component to it, it doesn't look like we're going to continue to get an uptick in moisture content. But yesterday's almanac, 72 degrees for a high temperature, 39 was your morning low temperature. So we felt a pretty good chill in the air yesterday morning. Yesterday afternoon, no chill whatsoever. It was a very pleasant environment still nonetheless, but a good deal above average for this time of year, and 5 degrees shy of your record of 77 degrees set back in 1950. Your record low temperature, 7 degrees. How about 70 degrees cooler than that record high temperature that was set back in 1924? No rain, so your departure is now going down about a quarter inch below where we should be at this point, 7 days into the month of January. Not too concerned with that until we get a couple months out in advance, or we have our first substantial rainmaker, and then we'll turn our focus to where we should be at this point in the calendar year. Sunrise, sunset times, 7:38 a.m. So I have been mentioning 7:37 was going to be our latest sunrise, but it actually looks like maybe our almanac data is flashing up a 7:38 time frame. All in all, it's just a minute's difference. You know that the sunrise is going to be just after 7:30 in the morning each and every morning for the foreseeable future. So yesterday was the first time that we've crawled above the 70-degree mark so far in the month of January. It has added our total to 6 days in a row that we have been above average with your afternoon high temperatures, but we've only been slightly above average for each of the first 5 days of the month. 64, 64, 60, another 64, and then a 63. All of those numbers within about 3 or 4 degrees of your average high temperature, maybe even getting into 5, as the average high temperature has dipped down to around 59 degrees. But now we have seen some numbers well above average as of yesterday, marking 6 days in a row to start the new year that we have been warmer than we normally are for this time of year. Well, today is going to continue to add another tally to that total and make it 7 days in a row, a week straight with above average numbers for the month of January. Now, this is the graphic I was referring to just a little bit ago. I went and did some editing with this, and I wanted to go ahead and talk about all the numbers that you need to know in one singular graphic. I know it is a lot being thrown at you, but we'll break it down piece by piece here. This is what happens with our averages, our sunrise times, and some of our records for the month of January, all time summed up into one graphic. So January 1st, here's our average high temperature, 59 degrees, your average low temperature at 36 degrees. Well, throughout the month of January, your average high and your average low are actually going to bottom out, because you can see by the time we roll into January 31st, 37 degrees will be your average low temperature, and your average high temperature creeps back above the 60-degree mark. Not too much difference. We should have high temperatures around 60 degrees each and every day, and some average low temperatures that should dip down into the mid to the upper 30s. That's about where we should start out, at least compared to average for each day during the month of January. Obviously, the coldest that those averages will get, again, that's the middle ground. That's what the average is. It's obviously not covering the lowest extreme, and and covering the highest extreme, excuse me, but I do imagine that this year's totals are going to continue to maybe increase those averages just a little bit. In terms of average rain, we already talked about it a little bit, but 4.02 inches of rain on average for the month of January since we started taking records back in the late 1800s. That's what all of these averages are going to be as of over the course of maybe about 140, maybe even getting into 150-year sample. So it's been quite a while. And on average, we typically receive about 1/4 of an inch of snow during the month of January. It's not too much, but we have to go back to 1955 to show the January that we actually did record the most snow, and that was 3.7 inches of snow. Now, if you remember last year, obviously we had our fair share of snow in the month of January, and those totals up here in the Macon area only got confirmed about 3 inches in nature. So 1955, that was a little bit of a snowier month of January than what we did have last year. But of course, Macon was just a select area. We had some totals that got up to 9 inches in central Georgia, all the way down in Cordele. So it's all relative to where you do live and where you do head out and about, and you saw some of that snowfall in nature. And then speaking of the wettest month of January all time, that was going to be back in 1925. Remember that graphic I told you about? Over a foot of rain, 13.22 inches of rain back 101 years ago. But now talking about some of the temperatures, it is obviously a warm stretch, and we're going to continue to talk about some well above average numbers for the foreseeable future, at least for the next 4 days, until finally we get some cooler temperatures back in the forecast. But it's nowhere close to this record warm temperature that we did see in the month of January, 84 degrees back in 1949. You will see that number pop up again and again as we do talk about some of the records all time for the next couple of days. And the coldest temperature we've ever seen in the month of January, 1985, -6 degrees. So it could be very, very warm. It could be absolutely blistering cold. Yes, we are on the warmer end of this range right here, but at least it's not going to be the warmest it's ever been. And at least we're not talking about -6 degrees. I imagine the high temperature didn't even get above freezing temperature that day back in 1985. And in terms of your sunrise and sunset times, we can find that at the bottom of this graphic right here on January 1st. So coordinating with this box that you do see right here above it, 7:37 a.m. sunrise, and then the sunset 5:39 p.m. We don't see too much change with these times as we go into the end of January. By the end of the month, your sunrise should be back to 7:30 a.m. flat, but your sunset time is going to be back past 6 p.m. So we are going to gain 34 minutes of daylight throughout the month of January. And then as we go into the month of February, that increase in minutes of daylight is going to be even more drastic as we now are starting to see the sunrise get a little bit earlier and a little bit earlier, and we are going to watch the sunset get a little bit later and a little bit later. And then we will do that all the way until we get into the first day of summer, the summer solstice, and that's going to mark the longest day of the calendar year in terms of hours of daylight. But that was a fun graphic that I threw together. We'll continue to circle back to that at the beginning of each and every month. Talk about some of your averages, how much daylight we're going to gain or lose, and some of those record temperatures that we've seen all time. But for the forecast for the rest of your Wednesday, I know I've been yapping for quite some time. We're about 13 minutes into here, and now I'm just getting to this afternoon. But 75 degrees, that is my forecasted high temperature, along with some partly cloudy skies, maybe even some mostly sunny skies at some times. But 75 will be flirting with a couple of records. Record high temperature today is going to sit at 76 degrees all time, and that's also the record for tomorrow. Keep that in mind when we talk about those high temperatures for the rest of the work week. So hour by hour, your meteogram still has us topping out at 73 degrees and between the 3 and 4 o'clock window, and then those numbers begin to decline back down into the 60s. I do think that we'll go a little bit above this. We did go above what the graphic was saying as of yesterday with a high temperature of 72 recorded in central Georgia. And that was even despite a lot of the cloudy skies lingering well into the afternoon. But speaking of the cloud cover, we can go ahead and get a glimpse of your satellite and radar. There are more gaps in the cloud coverage up to the north. A good gap right here down to the south as you make your way down I-75 south. but it does look like the denser cloud cover is going to be mainly off to the east, but we can see some spots of it lingering over Macon, over Warner Robins, and really all across the state of Georgia, kind of looking like tiger stripes, if you will, in terms of cloud cover on the satellite imagery, but not quite as much cloud cover as you see back over into Mississippi and in Alabama. And we talked about those temperatures. Even despite the cloudy skies they see over there, their numbers are already a little bit warmer than us, and I think that's giving us an idea about what's in store in the near future as we head throughout the afternoon. But don't be surprised if you continue to see maybe a very light sprinkle shower on occasion throughout today, throughout Thursday, and throughout your Friday. It's nothing really substantial in the way of rain chances, and I think the best window is probably going to be that early morning time frame, as we are going to have fog build in the picture, not only for tomorrow morning, but also once again on Friday morning and maybe even possibly on Saturday morning. So yes, you'll see some scattered light green dots, nothing substantial in the way of rain, just may be making it a bit of a messy environment as you head out the door, but it does look like tomorrow afternoon more clouds than sun are in the forecast. So I think this afternoon is going to be your best chance at least getting a glimpse of some of that blue sky. Now we go into Friday morning. Once again, still plenty of cloud cover in the forecast, but take a look at the top part of your screen, top left of the screen behind the banner to be specific. There's widespread rain showers and maybe even a couple of thunderstorms present in the northern portion of the state of Georgia. None of that's really present here in our neck of the woods, so our forecast, if you have any plans out and about in central Georgia this Friday evening and into the nighttime hours, you're looking good to go. In fact, we are still trending dry even as we go all the way to 4 a.m. on Saturday, but we can see a cluster of some showers and some thunderstorms in the near vicinity of us, and that is very likely to creep down as we go throughout the day on Saturday. We'll pick it up with the long-range models. Right now, we're kind of right there on the dividing line of the specific timing of this frontal boundary beginning to move through. But here's a look at your day 3 storm outlook, and this isn't going to pose any impacts to central Georgia, and I'll go ahead and tell you that we're not included in the day 4 storm outlook, which we were talking about for this specific area as of yesterday. So that 15% chance area, that light yellow shaded area, has translated into a level 2 out of 5 risk, while there is a level 1 out of 5 risk surrounding that yellow shade in the green shade, which is a bit of a lower risk. It expands from many states over to the west of us, even the northwest portion of the state of Georgia. That level 1 risk does exist, but we haven't seen this translated into the day 4 storm outlook as of right now. So we're not really looking at any severe weather possibilities as of currently. However, we could see this change as we get closer into tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised to maybe see a level 1, a low end level 1 risk for some portions of central Georgia. However, that's exactly what we had last weekend. Didn't come to fruition. We had some severe thunderstorm warnings in the near vicinity of us, but no severe weather was present across central Georgia. So it's nothing really that you should be too concerned about. Now let's take a look at your future view fog, and it looks like tomorrow morning once again has the potential for some patchy fog, even some areas of dense fog in nature. But I think tomorrow I'm more confident in the possibility of that dense fog being a little bit farther down to the south. We are going to have maybe some form of a weak frontal boundary try to drive through later today into early morning tomorrow, and I think that's going to result in pushing some of that humidity down to the south, and areas farther to the north behind that boundary just going to be a tad bit drier. But it doesn't matter, because by the time we roll into Friday morning, looks like widespread fog is back for each and every one here in central Georgia. Another morning of limited visibility, and I imagine this could make a stretch of 5 days in a row that we could have some form of a dense fog advisory here in central Georgia. Not for everyone, but it does look like at least parts of central Georgia will have been included in a dense fog advisory each day throughout the work week. And we continue to have that humid atmosphere. No real changes to it by the time we roll into Saturday morning at 4 a.m. But I do anticipate Saturday morning being the last morning that we could have some foggy skies in the forecast. Maybe some lingering into Sunday morning, just depending on the passage of the frontal boundary. But speaking of that boundary I was referring to a little bit later today, like I mentioned, it is going to leave some slightly drier air in the northern half of the state, but still a very humid atmosphere down to the south, and really just south here of Macon. So I think that's going to correlate to where you see a whole lot of foggy and dreary and maybe even misty skies early tomorrow morning. Going to kind of be a half and half forecast for central Georgia. But as we roll into Friday morning, going all the way into Saturday morning, we get the rebound in that humidity. That light green shade builds back in. take a look at that over to the west and the southwest of us. Those Gulf Coast areas are dealing with some very swampy and humid air. So that's going to be where your better rain chances exist. That's also going to be where some more widespread fog is also going to be present down in those more humid areas. But over the next 3 days, it's really just going to be a story of on and off cloud cover, some occasional peaks of mostly sunny skies, some partly cloudy skies, mostly cloudy skies. I'm not going to go ahead and pick apart at which time throughout each day is looking like the potential for maybe seeing some mostly sunny skies and finally having some sunshine in the forecast, because we're also going to have fog in combination with the cloud cover each and every day for the next 3 afternoons. So just depending on which day you do see the high temperature for, so 75 today, down to 73 tomorrow. I am anticipating a little bit more cloud coverage in the afternoon tomorrow, which is a reason for seeing some slightly lower temperatures. And then it looks like Friday we could receive some peaks in the cloud cover. Some of those peaks of sunshine that could allow for a warm up into the upper 70s. All in all, just know that your temperature is well above average for both your morning lows and your afternoon highs. Going to have about that 10% chance of seeing a mist or a drizzle shower each and every day. And the cloud cover is going to continue to be on and off throughout each of the next 3 days. No real change in the forecast, but if the more peaks of sunshine and the clearer your forecast is each and every afternoon, that will lead to some warmer high temperatures as you go into around 2, 3, and 4 o'clock each day. So we're going to hold on to the 70s until we get to Sunday. There we go. We finally have some signs of a change, and that is going to mean that our frontal boundary will pass through sometime in the later hours on Saturday. I still anticipate us to warm up kind of like normal as we go into Saturday afternoon. This number, if it does get a little bit lower, that's going to indicate more clouds and more rain in the forecast, and that would mean an earlier entrance from our approaching frontal boundary. The earlier it arrives, the earlier the cooler temperatures start to arrive as it passes through as we go towards the back half of the weekend, finally dropping the numbers back down below average. High temperature of 57 degrees compared to 59, which is your average high temperature. So after a stretch of what looks to be maybe about 7 to 8, maybe even 9 or 10 days for the beginning of January, all of the numbers being above average, we're finally going to flip the script as we go into the end of the weekend. And your morning low temperatures just going to bounce around between some upper 40s, low 50s, even some mid and upper 50s or some low 60s like we saw this morning. It's just all going to be dependent on how much cloud cover is present a little bit higher up in the sky. If you can get some clearing, then that's going to allow for some temperatures to drop down, say into the upper 40s as opposed to the 50s. Maybe a slightly chilly environment. I still felt a slight chill this morning, but I think it's more of a story of the limited visibility that is going to play a factor. And obviously, you will have some form of layering maybe to just keep you dry from those light mist showers as we go throughout each of the next couple of days. And then finally, I do expect the numbers to drop down into the mid 40s for morning low temperatures as we go into Sunday morning. And your humidity day by day, it completely drops off the graphic as we go in between Saturday and Sunday, also indicating the passage of our frontal boundary, finally pushing out this warmer and this slightly more humid air mass that has been remaining put virtually throughout the work week so far and will continue to be present until we get into the end of the weekend. So this frontal boundary, a widespread rainmaker, sending even some severe weather risk, it looks like, up to the north and the northwest of us. But it looks like by the time that frontal boundary tries to push into central Georgia, it's a matter of when. So we can see the European model here in blue going a little bit ahead of what the GFS has in green. I do anticipate it's really going to be that late afternoon time frame into the evening and nighttime hours on Saturday that is going to be a bit messy. First half of Saturday, the earlier in the day you have plans, I think that's going to be the better. But Future View is actually going to give us a better depiction of the actual timing that we can really fine tune as we go throughout the rest of today. Make sure you're tuning in to see what Ben Jones can say about it later on this evening as he gets the model run of Future View in. That will have our rain chances within view later today. And then as we go into Sunday morning, the consensus is rain chances are moving out, but we still have maybe a spotty shower or two and some cloud cover that lingers in the forecast throughout the first half of the day. But then as we go into the afternoon hours towards the end of the weekend, conditions gradually clear out. We go into Monday. Nice, clear and sunny all throughout the day. Cloud cover returns by the time we go into Tuesday, and then as we go into Wednesday, maybe some form of a low pressure system trying to cross over the peninsula of Florida and move back over into the Atlantic, but it does just kind of look like scattered spilled paint by the time you get into next Wednesday. Nothing really definitive of another rainmaker on its way by the midweek next week. And also along with that, we are indicating, or at least the National Weather Service has indicated, some pretty heavy rainfall rates associated with this frontal boundary over to the west and the northwest of us. So along with maybe some stronger weather in the form of some thunderstorms, maybe even some very low tornado risk back over to the west. They could also have some potential for maybe some scattered to isolated flash flooding due to some very heavy precipitable water values that may be approaching record-breaking territory, which essentially means this is going to be maybe some record levels of water in the atmosphere for this weather event all time around this date, obviously indicating that we are not typically this humid and we don't have this much water vapor in the atmosphere this time of year, hence why we are going to have more of a severe weather risk and maybe even some flooding risk outside of central Georgia. Again, all this severe weather risk I'm talking about, I'm just trying to inform you about what's going on outside of us, just right on our doorstep. And this will have implications if you do have any plans to, say, travel out of town later on this weekend, or maybe going up to Atlanta, because that's when the Peach Bowl is going to be. Even though you will be inside at Mercedes-Benz Stadium watching Indiana and Oregon square off, it still could be a bit of a messy atmosphere throughout the nighttime hours on Friday. But now let's try to fine-tune the timing of your rain chances as we go throughout this weekend. GFS says around 5 p.m. on Saturday. That's when rain starts to move in. And again, the higher totals are still forecasted to be to the west and the northwest of us. We could see maybe some higher totals start to clip maybe areas like Monroe County, Jasper, Butler, going over into Taylor County, Upson County, and Thomaston. Farther northwest that you live, that's where you're going to have some greater chances of rain, but it looks like the farther southeast that you go, your rain chances get lower and lower, but still only indicating maybe only a couple tenths of an inch of rain. I'm only thinking some scattered showers, maybe even enough to have a rumble of thunder or two, but not looking like anything in the way of severe weather nature. Now the European model just a little bit earlier, maybe around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and still rainfall totals in some isolated pockets, they could get up to maybe close to an inch, but most totals are still going to be only a couple tenths of an inch. And we don't see any areas of, say, 3 to maybe even 5 inches of rain like up here in the top left of your screen back into north central Alabama. And the general thinking is these models, not the best resolution, so they may be trending just a tad bit later than what we may actually see. Once again, our actual future view graphic, the graph model, will give us a better depiction of that as we go throughout the next couple of hours. But I just want you to be prepared. It's better to be safe than sorry for your weekend plans. I would plan them on Friday afternoon and evening or Sunday, because those are going to be the two best days this weekend. But it is worth noting, going to need some layers for those outdoor plans, as it is going to be pretty chilly and we are going to see temperatures not warm up as much as they could throughout the day on Sunday, as cloud cover that sticks around for the morning will steadily be decreasing by the time we roll into the afternoon. Still only forecasting some scattered showers, not seeing anything in the way of thunderstorms right now, but if we're good to get put in maybe a severe weather outlook or something, then I would change that and I would outline that risk. But at most, I only see us maybe a cover the bases level 1 risk, just like we were talking about as of last weekend. Could get a bit active for a couple areas during that afternoon window. However, this will finally put an end to the very warm stretch of weather and the very humid stretch of weather and the stretch of foggy mornings, because we will continue to have those possible and very likely throughout each of the next 3 mornings. I do anticipate Sunday that we'll finally start to see some clear skies to welcome you out the door, maybe some lingering cloud cover, but towards the beginning of next week, with the lack of moisture in the atmosphere, some substantially cooler air, that's where we're finally looking at some clear starts to the day, some sunny afternoons, and some temperatures that feel more appropriate for the January time frame. But go ahead and prep the winter coat, because that's when you're going to need it as we go into the beginning of next week, especially some of the mornings, which I do anticipate the models are only going to drop these numbers a little bit farther. 28 for a low on Monday, 30 degrees for a low temperature on Tuesday. You're going to need to utilize some of those winter weather clothes that you did get for Christmas from Santa Claus, not some of these summertime clothes that you didn't think you'd have to break back out until we got maybe at least into March. But yes, an uncharacteristic warm spell as we continue about the month of January. It will come to an end by the end of the weekend, but before that we will have our fair share of some scattered shower chances. We'll continue to fine tune those and get a much better idea over the course of the next 12 to 24 hours. So that's why tomorrow going to be an important day if you want to know about your weekend rain chances. Tune in here at 11 a.m. for the latest on your extended forecast. We'll fine tune that weekend forecast and we'll see how low the numbers go as we go into the beginning of next week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.